Can't you hear them? That's what the old man said to me. Now, I don't know how old I was, but I remember this exchange. It was April 24th, and I was at the Genocide Memorial. I looked up and I saw this old man, and he looked furious. I walked over and I asked him, "What's wrong?" And that's what he said to me. "Can't you hear them?" I had no idea what he was talking about, so I just shook my head. He repeated himself a little louder, a little clearer. "Can't you hear them?" I said, "I only hear you." I could tell he was disappointed as he turned and walked away. A few years go by. It's April 24th and I'm at the memorial again. And this time I see a woman in the distance, and she is crying her eyes out. I walk over to console her, and as I get closer, I hear her saying, seemingly to herself, "I don't know how. I don't know how." I put my hand on her shoulder so she knows she has somebody there. She turns to look at me, tears streaming down her face, and I ask her, "What's wrong?" And she says, "Can't you hear them?" I take a step back and my heart drops into my stomach as memories of the old man from years ago flood my consciousness, and I am left speechless. It only takes a few moments for her to realize that I'm not going to be able to give her the answer she's looking for, and so she turns and walks away. A few years go by. Once again, it's April 24th, and once again, I am at the memorial, and I am staring at it, and suddenly, I am overcome with emotion. I begin to cry, and then I feel somebody grab a hold of my hand, and I look down at this little girl, and she asks me, "What's wrong?" And I say, "Can't you hear them?" She shakes her head and says, "I only hear you." And then she turned and walked away. She couldn't hear them. For years, I couldn't hear them, but I hear them now. I hear every single last one of them. I hear 1.5 million voices shouting out to me all at the same time at the top of their lungs, and they're shouting out two words: "Help us!" And I don't know what to say, but they're shouting to me, "Help us!" And I'm just standing there crying, but they're still shouting, "Help us!" I collapse onto the floor, but they're still shouting at me, "Help us!" And finally, I find my words and I shout back, "I don't know how!" I'm trying. I've been trying, but I don't know how. I tell everyone I know about what you went through, and it does nothing. I plead and I beg to these politicians, and they do nothing. I light candles, and I cry, and I march for you. I write poems and songs. It feels like I'm doing everything I can, and yet it never feels like it's enough. So please tell me how I'm supposed to help you. Please tell me what it is that I can do. But then all the voices were gone. I received no answer. I stood up, wiping the tears from my face, and I turned to walk away. And that's when I saw her. The little girl from earlier, still standing there. She never left. And even though I knew the answer, I asked her again, "Can't you hear them?" And she looked up at me and said, "I hear you." I'm looking at her, so young, so eager to learn. In her, I see the next generation of Armenians, bright and ambitious. They will outdo us all. We need to hear them. It's been 100 years since we were nearly annihilated. 100 years since the lies began. 100 years of pain and wounds that won't heal. But we are still here. They failed to wipe us out. And in doing so, they only made us stronger. They made our voices stronger. Which is why we're here 100 years later, still shouting to anyone who will listen. And if the 1.5 million are listening, I don't even have to ask. I already know. They can hear us.